All right, why should you care about metabolism other than it's a required course for whatever you want to do in the future? Let's say go to a professional school of some kind, dental school, pharmacy, or medical school or grad school. But in addition to all these, goal-oriented requirements for taking this class, it's really a fundamental piece of knowledge that, in my opinion, everybody should have at least some kind of understanding. And why? Because you're alive. I mean, you wouldn't be alive without metabolism. And how you stay alive and for how long and how well you stay alive actually depends on the kind of metabolism you do in your cells, which in turn depends on what you eat. Okay, so you eat food to stay alive and healthy, and how that is used and transformed by your body is really the topic of this class. And if something goes wrong, and it will inevitably go wrong at some point to you when you get old enough, or it has already gone wrong in someone you know, then you get disease and metabolic dysfunction of some kind. So it is extremely important for health and disease. How to study? This is by far, okay, the number one question I get from students: how to study for the class. The videos and lectures are not enough. Okay, you use them as a guide to orient you of what topics you should cover more with the suggested readings and other readings that you may be able to find in other books. The most important thing I believe is really to solve problems related to the topics you want to study that we cover in class. And how do you find these problems? Again, look at any kind of problems. I believe that most textbooks, biochemistry textbooks, are actually very good textbooks. Each one of them has problems in the back, and go solve them. See how you answer them. Okay, so do not just watch the videos and show up for an exam. You will not do well. Watch the videos, read the material from any source you can find, and solve problems. The more problems you solve, the better you will do. Okay. So the outline of the course is already on the webpage, but you can see it here. We'll start with an overview, glycolysis and fermentation, and so on and so forth. Right up to about this point, half the class is how you take food in and how you break it down to simple things, okay, for the purpose of getting energy or getting building blocks that you need. After that, we'll start putting things together to make the things that our cells need, okay? And that gets a little more complicated because here at the top part here, you sort of put stuff in a funnel and you get down to simple principles. And then at the bottom part of this slide here, you sort of spread out in many different ways and to many different directions, depending on what you need to make. And we will finish everything with integration, a couple lectures at the end. It's actually, these are my favorite lectures. I mean, this is where everything gets put together and how, to get an understanding of how our metabolism is affected by the food we eat and the diet that we follow. So let's start with introduction, and this will be, the very first topic that you see here. Okay. So we're gonna, that's the overview of the introduction. We're gonna cover some definitions. We're gonna remind ourselves some very basic principles about bioenergetics. Then we're gonna deal with high energy bonds in the cell, and we're gonna close this introductory part with the transport of small molecules in the cell, which is actually an often neglected component of metabolism, but it's an extremely important component. It consumes a lot of the energy from our food that we take. At least a quarter or more is consumed to move small things in and out of the cell, or in and out of different compartments of the cell. Some definitions. Okay, we study metabolism. What does that mean? I mean, where did it come from? So metaboli, it came from Greek. It means change. It's really a transformation, a change. And when we say metabolism, we really mean the entire network, all the reactions, all the chemical reactions, the chemical transformations that are carried out by living cells, okay? Because they change something. every reaction will change something. You start with reactants and you get to products. So all these changes in a giant sum of all these changes, that's metabolism. If you want to be a little more specific, it's all these reactions that are used to obtain energy and chemical building blocks, and also to provide what you need to be alive. Okay, you know, those provisions and needs are not the same for every cell. Sometimes you want to build new cells when during cell proliferation. Sometimes you just want enormous energy to carry out the function without ever dividing. Let's say with heart cells, right? Our heart does not make new cells, but the existing cells, they work really, really hard all the time, right? So the needs are different, but all these reactions are part of metabolism. The metabolites are the little intermediates, the end products of these reactions, of these chemical transformations. Some of these reactants and products could be very big. In fact, in Biochem 410, you met some of those guys, big proteins, DNA, these are giant macromolecules. So we're not dealing with those in this part of biochemistry. We are really dealing with intermediary metabolism. And these are only the reactions in living cells that deal with small molecules. And what is small, an arbitrary cutoff would be, let's say, a mass of about 1,000 atoms. Okay? Anything smaller, that's kind of what we deal with. That's our focus. All these reactions that we're going to be dealing with humans like to classify things, to put things in boxes. And we have generated these two giant boxes to put all these chemical reactions in. One box deals with reactions that break down bigger molecules into smaller ones. And in the process, they release energy. And those are the catabolic reactions. If you go the opposite direction and you put things together to generate large molecules from small ones, those are anabolic reactions, and they need energy. They consume energy. So you have catabolism and anabolism. Now, nothing is, there is a lot of gray area. Nothing is as black and white. And there are many reactions that can go either way. And those, we call them amphibolic reactions. Okay? Sometimes they play catabolic roles. Sometimes they play anabolic roles. The TCA cycle, the Krebs cycle is a classic example of such reactions. So based on the metabolism that the living organisms depend on and do, we can classify them. So the energy, where is the energy coming from for all this? Who's paying for this? As we'll learn in more detail when we discuss about photosynthesis, really the sun pays for all life, okay, or most of it on this planet. So most of the energy source is sunlight, and the organisms that can capture this are called phototrophs. Okay. The ones that cannot capture the solar energy, and they rely on preformed molecules that have enough energy in them. And those usually, most of them have been made by photosynthetic organisms, let's say, like plants or something like this. So organisms like ourselves that rely on preformed molecules to get our energy, we're called chemotrophs. So that's where the energy is coming from. Now, as we'll see, for all metabolism, we need at least two major things, major elements. Let's say one is electrons. Okay, so where do they come from? Those electrons, and carbon, of course. Okay, and where is the carbon coming? So the electrons and the carbon can be either organic or inorganic. And in the case of electron donors, those are organotrophs, the organisms that rely on the organic sources of electrons, or they can come from inorganic sources. Rare, okay, this is extremely rare, but some unusual bacteria usually that live, let's say, deep down in some vent, a thermal vent or something like this, they rely literally on rocks, and these are to get their electron donors, and these are special kind of rocks, and they can harvest that energy and the electrons, and those are called lithotrophs. The vast majority of organisms on this planet are organotrophs. Okay? They rely on organic sources of electrons. Carbon, okay, for A lot of organisms, like ourselves, we rely on organic carbon source, so some preformed, chemical compound that has carbon, and we are heterotrophs, so we rely on some other organism to get our carbon. Okay, with animals usually and plants, and so those have made the carbon that we need. Now, some organisms, however, can capture inorganic carbon, for example, through photosynthesis. And they get the CO2, let's say photosynthetic organisms, plants, for example, and other bacteria that can do photosynthesis, and bacteria that can do photosynthesis. They can capture carbon from inorganic sources such as CO2, so those are autotrophs. So again, you can see here we're talking about energy and important components for metabolism like carbon and electrons and where they come from, and you can subdivide all organisms. Some additional terms. Homeostasis, which you're going to hear it a lot. What does it mean? It means you stay where you are. Okay, homeostasis means the same condition, the same situation you find yourself. That's it. So you maintain constant conditions. That's very important. I mean, we do maintain. I mean, intuitively you can sense that many of your cells maintain constant conditions, even if the outside changes. Temperature is a classic example. Our temperature in the cells is more or less around 37 degrees Celsius, no matter what the temperature outside is, right? So that's a typical scenario of homeostasis. Regulation is not the same as control. Regulation is really, when we're talking about metabolism, is to maintain homeostasis. So regulation is homeostasis in metabolism. Control is you go from one state to another state of some sort. So you turn a switch on in some way, and you go from on, let's say, to off. Homeostasis, the switch is always on or always off. Okay, it doesn't change, but in control it changes. So it's very different. This will become apparent, let's say, when we want to decide what to do with, let's say, some very important foods such as glucose or something like this. Sometimes you want to keep it steady, the concentration of glucose. In some other cases, you want to consume it and use it and all that stuff. So that's control. All right, so that concludes this very first video of the class, and where we were still in the introductory topics, and we just finished with some definitions.